I'm going to show you guys how we made $20,000 with a stealth launch in 2 days. So this is the exact sequence, no, not exact sequence, but this was from memory what we followed to be able to generate over $20,000 in 2 days. And with that $20,000, it was about 4 sales because it was a high ticket package, right? So if you guys really put that in perspective, that isn't really that's a lot of money, but that isn't really a lot of sales. So I'm gonna break it down step by step. So I'm breaking it down into a 7-step process, right? So first we have market research and offer, and then we have segmenting our audience. 3 is funnels and sales assets. 4 is email sequence. 5 is messaging. 6 is scarcity. 7 is sales and sales process, and then a bonus automation. So I'm gonna break it down, and this is pretty much 90% of what we did. So you guys can literally just copy it. I know it's not like the standard of how you would usually do like our entire launch, right? But this is essentially our stealth launch to be able to collect $20,000 in cash. We didn't even market to our main audience, right? We just stealth, like it says, stealth market. So it was through our email list, through our SMS list. That was pretty much who we did our marketing to. So let's jump right into it, and I'll show you exactly how we do it. Starting with number 1, which was the market research. So we'll go right to it. So we did 3 main primary ways of actually doing the market research, right? So first was Reddit groups, and I'll go into more depth about how we actually did this. So let me just move it to the side. So first here was the Reddit groups, second was the one-to-one consulting calls, and third was secondary research, right? So I'll break down exactly what I did for every single one, so you guys can literally just copy the entire process. But this is literally all you need to be able to actually conduct market research to a higher level, right? Now I'll show you guys some extra ways that you can do it as well. All right, so first is with the Reddit groups. So with the Reddit groups, right, all you really do is you search keywords, right? So you search keywords specific to your offer, And why we do this, right, is because Reddit is a way of kind of getting primary research as if you were doing something like consulting calls, right? But you're not actually going out and doing it yourself. You're taking what's already out there, and it's coming from the primary consumer, because majority of the people on Reddit, they're quite emotional people, right? And they do like just go out and blow their true feelings. So you can go look on Reddit groups, search up keywords specific to your offer, right? It could be like, for example, if it was dropshipping, it'd be like how to start dropshipping, why is dropshipping hard? So you just search up things that you want to know specific to your offer, and that is a great way to collect market research from a market that has already congregated into one specific area for you. So you don't even have to go out and scrounge for it. So the next one is the one-to-one consulting calls. So with the one-to-one consulting calls, essentially how you run them, right, is you put it out in your story, you put it out on a YouTube community post. That's what we actually did, since primary of our audience was on YouTube, right? Put it out on YouTube community posts, and by the way, it's really underrated how we did it on YouTube community. So yeah, put it out on YouTube community post, stories, your broadcast channel, Telegram, WhatsApp, whatever channels you really have. Say you're running consulting calls, and then they'll get a free lead magnet, or they get early access to the program or something that you're dropping, right? And then people will literally eat that up. Our consulting calls, we opened about, you ideally want to do about, so if you're doing this, or if the client's doing this, or whoever's doing this, right, if you're the offer owner watching this, you want to do about 15 to 25, even 30 plus, right? Because the more data, the more research you actually have. So the more calls you take, the more data that you actually have, right? Because you don't want a small sample size. So for example, right, let's say each of these dots represented a person. If you took a data from a sample size that was only 4 people wide, right, compared to one, let's say this was 1 2 3 4 5 6 9 10 11 12 13, compared to this one, I lost count how many dots I drew, right? So let's say you took a sample size from this many people, let's say just about 15 people from 4 compared to 4 people, right? What data would be more reliable? Data that came from only 4 people, or data that came from 15 people with all their own experiences, right? So if you see something consistent between these 2 pieces of data, this would be more reliable just because it came from more people, right? So that's something between qualitative and quantitative data. So that is more quality data that you're actually getting there compared to this one, which is a very small quantity of data, right? So you increase the sample size. So that is that. And then the third is secondary research. So secondary research is literally looking at things like your number one is competitors, 2, like funnel breakdown. So look at the headlines, the VSL, see exactly what they are doing and what the messaging is like, right? See who they're targeting. You can do research like that. So that's another great way to actually do secondary research. If you don't have as much of an audience, if you're getting majority of your leads primarily through paid ads, you can do secondary research in Reddit groups. Now, what you can also do, right, is it doesn't necessarily have to be just from like Instagram or YouTube, right? You might have LinkedIn, X, / Twitter. You have an email list. You can send out an email, right? Ask people to email you back, and then they get something in exchange, right? Or your free community, you can do the exact same thing. They can get early access. So you're dropping something, and then we're offering 10 free consulting calls, right? And whoever gets on these calls, they get early access to something. You always have to give some incentive. When we gave the incentive, we were giving a free lead magnet and also early access. So you can also do email lists, things like that. Literally just ask them to email you back. But that is essentially how we did market research, how we collected the data to be able to create the offer itself, right? We figured out what the pain points are, things like that. So we've going through market research, right? So that's that. Now we are going to go to segmenting our audience, and I'll walk you guys through that. All right, so the next part to the actual stealth launch that allowed us to collect $20,000 is the segmentation part, right? So segmenting was a really key important part of our entire like stealth launch, and just with the entire way that we ran this specific info product, right? And there was a lot of things that went wrong, but this was done really, really well. So segmenting, essentially, if you guys don't know what it means is basically just dividing it to specific demographics or psychographics or just actions that people have taken. So if they've gotten a specific lead magnet, we might segment it by a lead magnet, right? If they've opted into a specific funnel, then we might have segmented it by a specific opt-in. So what we actually did is we segmented it by 2 key points, right? So we had, this person was a huge person, by the way, and we had to essentially validate what the offer was. So the way we did this is we segmented. He had a email list of a big sized email list, a very big sized email list. The problem with this, right? He had big sized email list, a big SMS list, but the problem with this is it was a very cold and dead list. He hadn't been warming it up, which, if you guys know, you can't just blast out a bunch of SMS with a number. You'll burn that number straight away. You can't just blast out emails. You burn the domain and you'll both burn your reputation, right, as well, because these people, they haven't heard from you in months, they haven't been warmed up from you, and now you're suddenly trying to email them back without value. So what you got to do is you got to slowly increase the numbers, right? And this is something that we actually failed to do. We just went ahead and actually sent it because we were segmenting. So the way that we segmented it is based off people that had waited to get into his wait list. So he had a wait list that had going for about 2 years, but he never actually opened it. So we segmented it by the wait list, because the reason we did it by wait list and why we were able to collect so much money is because we were targeting our highest intent leads. And then what we did as well from here, right, with the segmenting, is we also had our email list, which we essentially segmented based off when the last activity they had. So when did they last opt in? How many different times have they opted in, right? So if it was within, I believe, 90 days when we did it, so it was like 90 days. So they opted in for 90 days or 30 days or 90 days, I can't remember exactly. But that would mean they would still be inside the segmentation. And this way we were only selling 2 really ideal prospects. And now another way we did this, which will go really into the funnel, is we also got people to opt in to a lead magnet plus free training, which was the free training was the lead magnet, sorry. So it's the opt-in to lead magnet and free training. And essentially what this lead magnet free training did was basically really educate them on our messaging and our actual offer, right? So I did not go through the offer, so I'm going to double back right around the offer and show you guys exactly how we did that. So that's essentially how we did our segmentation though. So we had a very big audience, right? We were only segmenting based on the people that have actually gone deeper into our funnel, into our email list, and people that are opted into previous things. So that's our segmentation. I'm gonna quickly go back to the offer because I didn't actually run through that. Okay, so running back to the offer, right? So the way that we actually did our offer was because it was such a overexposed niche and people have known for a very long time what the actual model was, right? We couldn't just sell them on the thing itself. So if you guys know anything about market sophistication and market awareness, these are 2 key things, especially in a market that is completely overexposed with the same thing. So an example of an overexposed market, right, is dropshipping. Maybe back in 2015, you could have just sold something that said, learn how to do dropshipping. And it's because people weren't as sophisticated, the market wasn't as sophisticated. They didn't know what dropshipping was, and they still wanted to learn more. But now if you did it now in 2025, the market's too sophisticated to be just sold on dropshipping. You have to have something different. And this is exactly what we did with this. So our market sophistication can run from 1 to 5. And essentially how this works, right, is 1 means like the market is unsophisticated, and 5 means most sophisticated. Now there isn't actual key terms for each point, but I'll explain each one and how our market was actually at a number 5, so it was the most sophisticated. So number 1, essentially what that means is it's a new market. You've just entered a market, no one else, you're like first to market. That's essentially what it means, right? First product, first thing, right? For example, ChatGPT, right? It's a market disruptor. Number 2, right, is it's still quite early on, but now you're getting some competitors as people starting to kind of copy the original, right? But it's still very early and you can still literally just sell the mechanism itself, right? So that's number 2. Now, number 3 is now it's actually getting crowded. Now you need to have some sort of differentiation factor to your actual messaging and to your offer. So this might be this might like just be a new name or a new spin on it, right? This might be a risk reversal. Now, number 4, right? This is going to get really hard to sell. So you need to have a lot of different things meshed together to be able to actually sell. So you need to have a strong offer. You need to have a unique mechanism. And you need to have strong offer, you need to have a unique mechanism, things like that, right? So you need to also have like things like a risk reversal, right? Things like that. Now, number 5, now you guys might be wondering, how am I meant to sell when number 4 is already really, really hard? So number 5, this is where we were at, and this is something that you guys have to understand, especially when you're selling in a saturated market, right? If it's copywriting, you can't just say copywriting. You have to give a new spin or a new way that people can perceive the actual product and what you're selling. If you can't give them a new perception or a new point of view, right? If you can't think multidimensionally when it comes to the way you sell your offer, then you won't be able to sell it, because at a number 4 or number 5, it's very hard when it's so sophisticated and there's a lot of competitors. So let me show you exactly how we did number 5. So number 5 means that you literally cannot do anything. Anything you do with this, right? If you put like a new spin on it, if you just say affiliate marketing, you're gonna learn how to start an affiliate marketing business in 30 days, for example, or how to start a dropshipping business in 30 days, right? That won't work. You literally cannot say anything but like risk reversal, things like that. That can potentially work, right? But it's still very, very hard. So what you have to do is you have to create your own market now. You have to make a market within a market. And this is basically what people like Brooke Hiddink did with HT, or high ticket dropshipping, right? So, or high ticket dropshipping. Things like, so you got high ticket dropshipping, right? And that essentially, he basically changed the belief around dropshipping and basically changed how people viewed dropshipping and the mechanism that he had. It was something completely new. What's high ticket dropshipping? It's different, right? Something like IPGA/growth operating. They're all like, what is IPGA/growth operating? It's all SMMA, right? It's all SMMA. So things like that. You have to introduce something new to market and have a unique name. You need to have something completely different from the market. And this is essentially how you can succeed in number 5 in a very overexposed niche, right? Again, this depends. This is specifically, this is something that you would have to do a lot when you're trying to sell the top of funnel market, which is what we were doing. So this would be like mass market with online people just trying to find their first online business, right? If it's a more sophisticated, not a more aware market, right? So let's say they're more solution aware or problem aware or product aware, right? Then you can use one of these kind of marketing tactics, right? With the sophistication, because they're less sophisticated if they're more aware, if that kind of makes sense. So that was how we did it. So we had a unique name with the way that we did it, right? We had something completely unique because we were dealing with a completely unaware market, but a very sophisticated market. So they were number 1 in the market awareness. So they were completely unaware or problem aware, 1 and 2, but they were completely number 5 in the market sophistication. So that was basically how we did the offer, right? So now we've gone through offer, went back to the offer, right? So we did that. We've run through the segmenting our audience, right? So now we're gonna actually run through the funnel and the sales assets. All right, so number 3, right? This is essentially the entire funnel and sales assets that that we actually run. And it looks really, really simple, right? Because it is. There was just a lot of moving parts that we had to make sure when we were running it, right? So essentially the way we did it is we were building hype. Sorry, that was one thing I didn't write. So we're building hype to a free training, right? So we're building hype to a free training, getting people ready for this free training, because we were breaking it down as if it was gonna be like a 2-hour free course, things like that, right? It didn't end up to be as long as 2 hours, but it was essentially a free training, hyping that up, getting people and our top of funnel audience. So that was like email list, YouTube community, YouTube and IG. And I just really want to emphasize on how underrated YouTube community is. It's like IG stories for YouTube, right? People think there isn't a way to communicate to your audience on YouTube, but there is through YouTube community, because every single subscriber, well, majority of them will see your YouTube community post, right? And it's like YouTube itself. It's like YouTube videos. It's a long-term asset, and it will push it out even months after it has been viewed, after it's been posted out by yourself. So that's a really one thing, that if you guys do have a YouTube audience, right, you can use YouTube community to funnel to IG if you want to use DMs, or can use that as a mechanism for people to actually use to actually respond and communicate with people, right? Because we were getting anywhere from, on our best posts, we're getting anywhere from like 100, 200 comments on our YouTube community posts. So we have the email list YouTube channel, right, with our YouTube videos, right, changing the descriptions. We had YouTube community and our IG. So we had hype, right? We pushed them. Once we actually dropped the free training, it was gated behind a opt-in, by the way. So that's opt-in. So that opt-ins are from all these traffic sources. They opted into the free training, and this essentially educated and nurtured them. So if you guys remember back just a couple of minutes ago, I broke down the offer. We were dealing with a very sophisticated market, so we had to introduce something new. Now, the caveat to introducing something new and selling to a top of funnel audience that is never actually done online business before, they're completely new to the market, right? They're still looking for their first thing, right? They're a more unaware audience in the market, is you have to educate them. Compared to, let's say we were selling to people that had an existing SMMA and we had an SMMA offer, we wouldn't have to educate them as much on SMMA because they already run it. They already know what they're doing. But for this, we had to educate them because they didn't know what it was, what our unique mechanism was. So we had to educate them on what it was, right? We had to do a couple things. So we had to educate them. So what it was. So this was a educating and nurturing mechanism. So number one is what it was. Number two is how is it different? How is it different? Number three, and we literally wrote this just as a sales asset, right? So number three, how is it different? Number one, what it was. Number two, how is it different? Number three, right? How is it better? How is it better? So this could be where we can add in things that just make it differentiate it, right? And this really comes down to your messaging. Fundamentally, the actual action for nearly every business model, right? Every spin on any messaging that people give, right? With any unique name that people put on any mechanism, fundamentally, the action itself is the exact same, right? So number one, what it was. Number two, how is it different? Number three, how is it better? Number four, how can I have it? How can I have it? So we had to teach them how they could actually do it, right? So give them actionable steps to actually take to be able to start building that whatever mechanism that we're actually teaching them. So it was some sort of make money online, right? It's like, how can I have it, right? Number five, we obviously had a call to action. So now this call to action, we didn't actually try to sell them. This is why it's called a stealth launch, right? We didn't try to sell them. We didn't try to, the only redirect page we redirected them to was telling them to check out their emails. And this was so key for us to be able to make so much money, right? But that was essentially the entire thing. So we were call to action. Then number six was also, does it work, right? So we had social proof. Does it work? So the client did have social proof, right? It may have not been with a mechanism, but they had social proof with the business model and helping coaching clients out. So what it was, how is it different? How is it better? How can I have it? Call to action, and does it work? That was all you needed to be able to actually convince people on our mechanism, right? Especially a top of funnel market. Now, one thing, right, that I will admit that we made a mistake is you have to remember, with a study from Google, it takes 7 hours, 11 touch points on 4 different platforms to be able to turn someone from a cold. So we're considering these people cold because they're not cold to us as a person, but they're cold to the actual mechanism or the process, right? So we needed 7 hours of content. We only had about an hour and a half, right, educating on this. So this 7 hours has to be specific on what you're selling. We need 11 different touch points. We were able to do this well enough, actually, the 11 touch points. So we had that down on 4 different platforms. So we had that down as well. So they knew us, right? They just didn't know the mechanism enough because we didn't educate them enough. And this really reflected further along with our close rate and the people hopping on the call, because they were like, I don't even know what I'm getting sold, which is the last thing that a sales closer or a marketer or anyone on the team really wants to hear. So we failed. I wouldn't say failed. We collected cash, but we failed to do better like educating. That's essentially what we did. But that is something that's a lesson for next time for other offers. But essentially going back to the funnel, right? So we had the traffic at the top, push them down to free training, put them through email flows, and this was also the redirect page telling them to check their emails, right? Because we had a gift for them. And then from the emails, right, we pushed them to book a call. So all the selling was done through emails / I could also say SMS, right? SMS, email / SMS, but we only did about 1 to 2. So that is the entire funnel that allowed us to make over $20,000 in 2 days once people were actually being able to book a call. And we were able to estimate when people book a call, because this entire system and funnel, by the way, was completely automated besides the post that we made on the traffic. Once people came through the funnel, they were getting sold by a certain point that we knew when it was, because it was completely automated on how we ran this. So that's basically the entire funnel and sales asset we used. This was the number one sales asset. And then we did have more sales assets in the email flow. So another sales asset. So this was what allowed us to get to about, with the 7 hours, we crossed it off. We got about 2.5 to 3 hours of educating, which is still not enough to really sell people. I mean, that obviously it did well enough to make us money, but we could have sold more people if we did a couple of things, and I'll show you exactly what we could have done and improved better at the end of this video. So we had another sales educating asset, right? Now, before I move on to the next thing, the reason that's so important to educate them is one word: it's to build trust, right? If they already trust us because they opted in, but they don't trust the mechanism because they don't know what it is. Confused buyers don't buy. That's the number one rule that you have to remember. You have to build trust with 3 things. They have to build trust with you, which was easy enough for us because our person had never actually sold anything, so they absolutely loved them. They have to build trust with the vehicle itself, so just the business model itself. They have to be sold on that, which is easy enough because they had been watching his videos. And number 3, they have to be sold on the actual mechanism, the unique selling point, right? And that was the thing that we lacked in. Now, that's the funnels and sales assets. So now we can actually move on to the email sequence, and I can show you exactly how we did this. And this is where all our selling was done, okay? All right, so it may look complicated, but this is exactly the email sequence that we did to be able to actually start selling and making money, right? So this is how we did this. And then I'll have to rub this off and then go into a bit more. So first we had the soap opera sequence, right? This is from Russell Brunson. Well, it's popularized by Russell Brunson, came from another person, right? And it's essentially a sequence of emails, about 5 to 7 emails made for selling, right? This is exactly what we ran with that allowed us to create 20 grand. So let me run you exactly through it. And we did 2 different types of soap opera sequences to be able to educate. So remember, we only had about 2.5 to 3 hours of educating. So this is what we did. So first, I'm going to run you through this one. So this one was the free training. So everyone that opted into the free training, right? And we did automations where we made sure that people didn't opt in twice if they came from 2 different sections. But everyone who opted in from the free training, they went through this 5 email, or it's 5 to 7, I believe. We had about 2 more, right? So the last 4 are really selling emails, but we had 5 to 7 email sequences that came day after day that were essentially a long ass sales letter, a long ass sales asset, educating people. And now how exactly a soap opera sequence works is like this. So first, there's the first email, right? So if this is the first time they're opting into you or opting to this, right? Especially with our audience, since they hadn't been educated in a while, this email here was basically to introduce us. This is the actual framework with the soap opera sequence. So first is the introduction, right? So this is where you introduce them, you sell them on you, right? So remember, you had to sell them on 3 things. So you had to sell on 3 things, right? So you sell them on you, sell them on the vehicle, I cannot spell that word, and sell them on the unique selling point / the mechanism, right? So you have to sell them on those 3 things. Sell them on you, vehicle, mechanism. So the first email in the soap opera sequence is selling them on you, right? You need to be able to sell them on you, why they should listen to you, why you're their authority figure, how they can relate to you, right? This is where you create a relatable story, things like that. Now, the thing different with soap opera sequences and sequential emails is that each email should lead to the next, right? So we would have like a PS or a connecting story with each email. And this happened between all 5 to 7 emails that we ran. So this is how it ran. So email 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So it would be a long story. So the first email is essentially the intro. Now the second email is the problem here. So this is where we hit a problem slash a wall, right? Now, basically, any good story, any type of storytelling, any movie that you see, right, there's always going to be a problem. So you've set up your intro where you introduce you as the main character, as the hero of the story. Now, the second part is the problem slash wall. So this is where your character, right, which is going to be you, most likely if you're running the offer, or if you're like me, writing this for other people, right? This is going to be where you hit a problem slash wall. Now, you don't need to be great, amazing at copywriting to be able to do this. You just need to be able to tell a story that's compelling and can connect with the audience. So this is where you hit the problem slash wall. So the most frequent problem that you got from your market research, again, this is why it's important to do market research, you would write that as a problem slash wall that people are hitting. So we could be like, oh, we tried every business model from affiliate marketing, from drop shipping, from SMMA, right? But we weren't able to do it until we started this one specific business model, right? And then what you do again is you then hit another problem slash wall. I wasn't able to figure it out for years. I was working a year and a half non-stop, working 2 jobs, right? And I'm saying the elements that I'm saying is things that's really resonating with the audience. A lot of these audience and the people that were actually reading these emails, some of them had 2 jobs. Some of them had been trying for years on end, hadn't found any success, right? So this is how we were able to resonate with the problem slash wall. Now, the third email, this is the most important one, right? This is with the epiphany. So the purpose of the soap opera sequence as well is to sell people on your mechanism, right? And especially in the 4th to 5th email, this is where we can sell them. And the 6 to 7, 5 to 7 is where you really sell. So in this 3rd email, this is where you've been going through the problems, right? Remember, this is a sequential story. You've been going through the problems, you've been struggling, and now you hit the epiphany moment. You're like, wow, I figured out how to solve it. I know how to solve it, right? It's like an epiphany. It's like, I found the solution. It's like, for example, how if you were to explain it in a movie, right, it'd be like that moment where he's found that one thing that can beat the villain, as an example, right? If it was like heroes versus villains, a thing like that, right? So that's the epiphany moment. So this is where you found the solution. Now, in the next email, right, this is when you can start beginning to sell. This is where you can start introducing your product, but you still have to educate. So this email here, number 3, in my opinion, is the most important one, because you have to educate on the epiphany that you had. You have to tell them what the epiphany is. And this leads into email 4, which is where you start really like warming up the sale. I can't really remember what I called it before, but it was warming up the sale. So this is where you really start to try to educate them more, educate them even further, right? You start to warm up the sale, and then you can have it as a little PS. It's like, PS, right? I'm opening up my mentorship to X, right, to learn X model that we had been educating them on from the free training for the other lead magnet that we were pushing here. So there was a lead magnet somewhere here. I believe it was in this one, right? So we had another one here. So we had another lead magnet. So we had another lead magnet there. So they'd been educated on the free training. They'd been educated on the second lead magnet. They've been educated on this entire email sequence and story, right? So we definitely got that 11 touch points of 4 different platforms. Now we're really trying to increase the hours that they're with us and learning about the mechanism. So then that's the warm sale with PS. And then number 5 is what we're selling. This is where you give them a call to action, right? This is again where you try to, with the selling, you try to actually wrap an entire story around it. You say, I went from here, I was down here, right? I was struggling with 2 jobs. I had my kids to look after. I was working online business model as well, but nothing was hitting until I was able to figure this out. And now look where I am now. I'm living in Miami. I've got a Lambo. I've got my kids I can buy my kids anything I want. I can take care of my family, things like that, right? So you really show the juxtaposition between where you were and where you are now, right? And this essentially, you've been priming the entire sequence all the way through, so you're selling. Now, from here with email 5, so then we have this one and email 6, right? So essentially what you do here is, again, you're selling email 5. So this is 5, 6, and 7. Now what you do here in 6 and 7 is essentially objection handle. The most frequently asked questions or objections that you may get in sales calls, or questions that you got frequently asked in the consulting calls, right? When you're doing market research, you add them as objection handling questions, right? So it could be things like, I don't have time, that's an objection handle, or that's a false belief. Again, limiting or false beliefs is the way you handle it. So I have no time, I have no money, I have 2 jobs. That's a false belief, right? That's a limiting belief. Now you handle those, and again, at the end of those emails, you sell. Now on this last email, this is where you introduce scarcity. You say, we're we're closing. So we weren't closing the offer, but we were closing a special offer for these people because they were the first people in, right? And we essentially gave them scarcity on they might miss out. And this is essentially where your sales, when you're running something like this, right? When you've got your emails, it's going to flatline, and this is where it's going to rocket up, right? It's going to be something like this. It's going to be a little U shape. So once you give the offer first, right? Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be this specific sequence, but once you start giving the offer or launch the offer, it will get the most amount of sales. Then it will go down. It won't dip that much, but it'll flatline until the end where you start giving scarcity. And this is where majority of your sales actually happen. So that is essentially how it was when we were selling. Now you can see this other sequence here, which was essentially the email list / mentorship. Now this email list and mentorship, right? These people were prime, but they weren't educated yet because they were only on this mentorship list had pushed back 2 years, and this email list had been about 90 days back. So we still had to educate them. So what we did is we put them through our own email soap opera sequence, right? Where we were just educating them on the entire mechanism. So again, following the same sequence of intro, problem wall, epiphany, warming up, trying to really show and sell the mechanism, selling the mechanism, but not actually like giving them a call to action to buy yet. And then from there, it was only 5 emails, and we pushed them to this email flow where they started the actual email flow here. And then they went through another entire email flow where they were actually getting sold from email 5, 6, and 7, right? And this essentially allowed us to be able to prime them without doing too much work and educate them without doing too much work or trying to really think about it, because this is all entirely automated. And then once these guys left this email sequence, because eventually it would have to end, we would put them in our own email marketing newsletter. So we would then put them in an email newsletter, and then we could start selling them. And essentially this entire sequence allowed us to do 2 things, right? So number 1, sell, obviously. Sell plus educate. And then number 2 was warm up. And we sold this entirely through the emails, through SMS messages, right? And through, eventually the month after, we introduced dialing and calling the leads, which allowed us to make a lot of money. But this was the 2 main things that we wanted to do. We didn't sell and educate and warm them up, because eventually then we started marketing with our main YouTube channels, Instagram, teaching them and actually doing a proper launch, right? We weren't really trying to educate them in terms of the mass audience because we hadn't prepared. We just wanted to collect cash. So this was the email sequence that's allowed us to make money. So this was the most important factor to the entire funnel, right? Now, so many people neglect email sequence, but if you do it right, you can make a lot of money. Now, one thing we did really, really wrong with this though, is we had no email. We tried to implement this, but I don't know why we couldn't do this at the time. We had no email newsletter infrastructure. So after they got to the 7th email, they were in a wait step for about a week, and we lost them cold again, which was completely stupid, because emails is a great way to sell them, as seen here. This entire sequence took us about 2 days to build. So it took me about 2 days to build, because I wrote the copy for this and I built the automations for this. And it took about 2 days to 2 to 5 days. I can't remember exactly, but it absolutely printed for us and worked really, really well. So that's essentially how we did this entire sequence, right? So that is the email sequence. So now we're going into the messaging. All right, so now we're going into the messaging, all right? So there's 3 key components that we did with the messaging. So number 1 was resonating with the audience. We had to resonate with them. We had to make them feel as if we were their ally, not another guru that was trying to sell to them, right? This was really key and important to be able to do. And the reason that we were able to resonate, again, is through market research. Your messaging comes through market research. Number 2 was understanding their pain / problems. This is the most important thing, because here's what it looks like, right? So there's a person here, there's that there, and then there's a person here. This person is happy, this person's sad, this person has pains, this person is living his dream life, right? So this is this person in the future, this is his desired life, right? This is where he wants to be 365 days from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. But this is where they are right now. They're in pain. So now what we did is we juxtaposed this and created our mechanism as what most people call this as the gap, bridging the gap, right? That's essentially what we did. So we went from the pain and the dream life. Now, one thing we did different, right, is we not only juxtaposed where they are now to where they could be, but we also juxtaposed, right, what would happen if they didn't take action. Now, this was really, this is something that Imagati does really well. So this is what they will look like 365 days from now if they don't take action. They will look like this person. And that is the last thing that most people want to do. People hate not making progress. They hate being in pain. So if they realize that if they don't take action now, they'll still be in pain. They'll never figure out how to do it. And you make them realize that they've been trying to figure this out for the past 10 years, past decade, past 5 years, but they still haven't figured it out. They will buy, right? If you can get this right, if you can get the messaging right, you can get them to resonate, understand their pains, understand the size, and you can juxtapose correctly with what I've just shown here, right? You will print money. So that was another key thing with the messaging. All right, so the next part is the scarcity. All right, so the next part to our 7-tier process to be able to print $20,000 in 2 days is scarcity. So this is where you can sell to people based on their fear. This is called fear-based selling, right? And scarcity is one of the key factors and biases that you can use to be able to sell to people, right? Now, in any given market, right, everyone is this. So there's 3 different types of buyers. There's emotional, there is logical, and there is fear. Now, majority of people are emotional buyers. People are also logical buyers. There's a decent amount, and then there's also fear-based buyers. But they're not all just one and the same. They're not all just one. They're just emotional buyers. One's just logical buyers. One's just fear-based buyers. Buyers, in my opinion, right, are actually intertwined like this. Some people are more emotional than others, some people are more logical than others, some people are more fear-based than others. But majority of the time it is emotional buyers. But when we were trying to sell, right, you've already done the emotional selling through the messaging and through actually resonating with them. You've done the logical buying the logical selling and the messaging again by telling them, giving them the numbers, giving them the stats, giving them the social proof. Now you need to do fear-based selling by introducing scarcity, right? So this is the other way that you can get other people to buy, right? And the way that we did this is through limited time offers, limited spots, foundational members. People love to be first. No one likes to lose. People like to be first, right? So if you tell them they can be foundational members, you can help them build the thing, they'll buy as well. So that's another thing. So that's scarcity, and that was something that allowed us to sell well as well. So the last thing is sales process and sales, and then we can go into the bonus. Okay, so with the sales, right, we had 2 closers, 1 setter. It was a pretty lean sales team, right? And then had me, there was me, my partner, killer in this offer. He was absolutely amazing. Me and my partner, 2 closers, 1 setter. And at that time, we weren't actually doing any dialing at that moment. Actually, we didn't even need the setters. We just had the closers. At that time, actually, I remember now, we didn't actually have any setters because people were just coming through the funnel on their own. We just had 2 closers, right? They closed for us. And essentially, these guys, literally, we just lined up the calls for them, and then the first 4 calls, I think they were at a 75% close rate, which was absolutely insane on a pretty high ticket package. So this was the actual sales process that we used, right? And one problem that actually really occurred really badly when this happened is our SMS didn't work. Now, if you guys don't know, SMS has about a 95+% open rate, right? So if you don't have SMS going, emails, there's a bunch of different people, but SMS, very few people have your phone number. But SMS, we didn't have it going. It wasn't working. So this decreased our show up rate significantly. That was a huge problem that we had at the start. But nevertheless, this is what our sales process was. We had emails too, right? So what the emails was one was educating and the other was a reminder, right? And then another thing with this at the time, we didn't have any sales assets and trust assets in terms of case study videos and testimonial videos from clients at the time. So this was actually much harder to sell for the close. We did have results, we just didn't have the videos, right? Which is hard because you can get a screenshot of a text which can be doctored. You can write your own testimony. You can go on Trustpilot and write your own things, right? But if you get someone to film their face and say, this guy's product works, that is the ultimate level of trust that you can build with a customer. So we had educating and reminder, then we had another educating, and then it was a reminder. It was just one. So then we had a reminder, and then at 4 hours, it was another reminder. And remember, we didn't have SMS going. It had it in the flows, but it wasn't running because our emails was messed up. About 1 hour out, it was another reminder. And then 5 minutes, it was a reminder, right? So that was a really simple sales process, and it wasn't the best sales process just because we didn't have the educating assets and the sales assets, the trust assets. We didn't have the case study videos to really build trust. And the main thing that we're really sending back to them again to educate was the free training and video if they haven't already watched it, right? One thing we could have done is set in the actual filtering process with the bookings, right? Is we could have been like, have you watched this free training? If they haven't, then no, they're not allowed to book. Because if they haven't, it's near impossible to sell them on something they don't know on something that they don't actually know what it is, right? It's hard to sell people if they don't know what it is. I mean, it's impossible. Like, if you were told to buy something blindfolded, right? Would you trust it? Would you buy it? No. So that was our sales process and our sales team. Really, really lean, eventually expanded much later on. So 1, market research, 2, segmenting our audience, 3, sales funnels and sales assets, 4, email sequence, 5, messaging, 6, scarcity, 7, sales plus sales assets. So this entire process, right, allowed us to make $20,000 in 2 days, 48 hours. So now I'm going to go into the bonus and automation so you guys can see what automations we had. All right, so this is the bulk of the automations that we had. These are the key ones, right? So first is the email flows. Like I showed you before with here, the email sequences, that was key to be able to actually educate. Second was Discord. So this is where we got notifications like, oh, new book call, this person opted in for the free training, things like that, right? And also like when a payment was processed. So that was Discord. Number 3 was again, like payment reminders, right? So we got reminded on our payments. Number 4 was the pre-call process. So the email reminders and SMS reminders that didn't work. 5 was the landing pages and the redirect pages. That was really, really key. And those were the majority of the automations that we actually run with. So it was that, but a lot of things were actually breaking at the time because of poor testing. It's so important now that what I do as well is we test and run through the customer journey and the customer process and how they actually went through the entire, how a person would go from seeing our content all the way to becoming a buyer. We would walk through that step by step. And I guarantee you, if you do that, you will find things that break. It's better that you find the things that break compared to your customers finding the things that break and then you finding out later on, because that could be a potential sale from an educated, nurtured, and financially qualified buyer. But this entire process allowed us, so that's our bonuses as well, still allowed us to make that much money, right? And you guys have to understand this was for sales. That is not a lot of sales, right? For sales. So you can probably figure out how much it actually costs, the ticket price, how much it costs, right? For sales is not a lot, right? And we're having hundreds of people going through. So this should have done way better than it actually did, right? But another thing with our audience was majority of them were pretty broke. So it was either people that were coming from third world countries or people, since we were so top of funnel, make money online. Obviously people that are looking to make money online don't have money, right? They're trying to make more money. Otherwise they would be doubling down on what they're already doing, right? It's either with making money online, it's either people that are looking to make more money and have good money, right? And trying to get out of the job, or people that just don't have money regardless, right? They make like 20K, 15K, 18K a year. So we did this, right? And that was the reason this entire thing was the reason we were able to make $20,000. Now, if you guys need help implementing something like this, right? If you're someone that has a personal brand or an offer, then just check the first link in bio, DM me any questions you have. But I appreciate you for watching this video. And yeah, that's everything.